I'm sort of like the weird Greek philosopher guy who hangs around the Subaru. Anyway, about 25 minutes, is that right?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do essentially is tell you a bit about my talk, give you a little bit of background, and then launch into a bit of criticism of some recent scholarship before outlining my argument in its three main points and then concluding. To begin with, what my paper is about, and the subject I'm going to address is an essential thesis, that the god Deus Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, introduced to Rome in 274 by the Emperor Aurelian, in fact has its origins in the eastern city of Palmyrene. Alright, if that made no sense, I'll give you some background, something that's a bit of a challenge because we all have different levels of expertise. But I guess I would tell you about three things. The first is the context of the 3rd century crisis at Rome, into which the Emperor Aurelian lived and reigned. The general period we have is from 235 to 285, with the worst, the very pit of what is commonly called a crisis, although even that term is controversial, occurring between 268 and 270. But what is true without any ambiguity is that it was a time of, generally over the decades, great stress for the empire due to a multitude of barbarian invasions, the presence and reoccurrence of plague, monetary debasement, potentially declining population, short-lived emperors, and frequent military coups constantly being replaced, and so because of that, constant civil war. It was, without a doubt, a troubled time. And if the whole period cannot be called a crisis, at the very least, this particular low point of that crisis, into which the Emperor Aurelian came to power, most certainly was. This is the best map I could find. It's not perfect. But what I would emphasize here is the tripartite division of the Roman Empire. A central Roman Empire in purple here. A Gallic Empire in, I guess, orange up over there. And a Palmyrene Empire, as we call it, which we'll be concerned with in yellow here. The Roman Empire, briefly or non-briefly for those at the time, split in three, only to be reassembled by our hero Aurelian. Now, the man himself was born around 214, 215, somewhere in the Balkans. And he was one of the early emperors in a line of Balkan Illyrian soldier emperors who are credited with reforming, refashioning, and leading to a resurgence of the Roman Empire in the 4th century from the crisis towards the end of the 200s. And in particular, some of those major emperors we think of as Diocletian and Constantine, who undertook major reforms. But Aurelian himself, though short-reigned, perhaps achieved by the point of the sword some of the most important parts of that, essentially reattaching these two breakaway empires, the one in the east only quasi-Roman, into what had been the Roman Empire, along with derailing any number of barbarian invasions. And if you look at a brief discussion of his reign, his entire reign is almost spent on campaign. He's nicknamed in two of our sources Aurelian Sword in Hand. They say he got that nickname when he was a young soldier because he was just so aggressive and wanted to fight everything. Now, I don't know if that nickname's true, but it does very aptly summarize his reign, most of which he spent on campaign constantly. Coming to power in 270, within the year, essentially, he went, defeated a rival in northern Italy, came back, defeated the invading Vandals, then goes to Italy, defeats another invading tribe, quickly puts down a revolt in Rome, and then goes back over here to the Balkans to defeat invading Goths, I think, Goths, I think, this time. The point being, his reign is spent almost entirely on campaign and fighting, both to reconquer and repel invasions. And in particular, this is true with the one exception of a brief period in 274, towards the end of the year he spends at Rome. And there he introduces the cult of Deus Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, the new sun god that he brings to town, so to speak. And he embarks on any number of steps. He builds a gigantic new temple with the spoils of war from conquering all this. He institutes a new set of games to this new god, and a new priesthood called pontificates, just like the old pontificates. But these ones, in addition to those, being devoted to the sun. And so scholars have had something of a debate about how they should and can see this new cult he introduces at Rome. Where does it come from? The stereotypes from the period say that Eastern sun gods are Eastern. That's sort of the definition of who they are, right? And so surely it must have been a sun god from one of these eastern cities. In particular, the emperor Elagabalus, who had reigned a couple decades beforehand, had controversially introduced the sun god from his native Emesa, a city relevant to Aurelian at Rome. But I assert that is not the case, that in fact he brought the god from Palmyra, the center of this new emperor that he conquered and laid to waste. Now, recently this view of probably an Emesene, but certainly an Eastern sun god, has been challenged by a new generation of scholars, particularly Stephen Hidgmans, Gaston Hallsberg, and Alaric Watson. Right, they point out that in fact it is sort of a racist imperialist view of Eastern decadence that has led us to believe that Eastern religion must be solar and can't be native Roman. And they have shown at once that the cult Aurelian introduced, unlike Elagabalus's, was very Roman, sort of native Roman in its form, and that there was a long history of solar worship at Rome and Italy. However, I think they overlook a number of important points of evidence. The two main arguments are based on the fact that the god Baal of Palmyra is not in fact a sun god. He's not in the Palmyrene religion, right? It doesn't really make sense. How is Aurelian getting the sun from this? And second of all, they ask why Aurelian would make his new master of the empire the god of the defeated city. Well, I'll answer the first one very quickly, right? That's almost an oversight. If all of you remember how Marcus Furius Camillus introduced, right, Juno from Veii to Rome, despite her being the patron goddess of a defeated city. And there are countless other examples of this ritual and approach elsewhere in Roman history. That view doesn't quite hold up. Then there's the question of whether he's a sun god or not, Baal of Palmyra. They say, right, he isn't. That's true. But that is also not inherently important, right? The precise relationship to the sun versus the moon versus being a Jupiter figure of an Eastern god is very unlikely to be relevant to a peasant's soldier emperor from the Balkans who's simply interested in having some fashionable, snazzy Eastern thing from his conquered city. In a way, it's sort of the line, it's Eastern, it's from the Eastern city I conquered, it's solar, it's new. May well have been enough for Aurelian, or at least enough for his soldiers and the sort of people he was trying to please and to send a message. And in fact, I think that there have emerged three very good points of evidence that show this Palmyrene connection of Sol Invictus. The first is related to the coinage we have from Aurelian's reign. And what has become evident is that there is a sudden shift in the year 273, about the summer. Before then, the chief god on Aurelian's coinage had been Jupiter, as sort of his patron. And then starting in early summer in some of the Balkan and Eastern mints, and by midsummer moving to Italy. And from that time frame, the fact that it starts in the east, we can tell Aurelian was in the east at the time, or at least make a pretty good guess. Jupiter is replaced by Sol Invictus. Now for some chronology for a moment. After campaigning over here, it is in the summer, essentially, of 272, that Aurelian invades the east, sending a fleet to reconquer Egypt. He marches through here, and at Emesa defeats the Palmyrenes, and then marches on Palmyra and forces the city's surrender in 272. And for the winter, he goes back to campaign to the Balkans. But in early 273, he hears news of a revolt at Palmyra. The Palmyrens, unsurprisingly, don't like their fledgling empire being conquered. And Aurelian, of course, had to hurry off back here before he could really settle affairs. And so, to prevent them organizing, he very quickly marches back down through here to put down a revolt at Palmyra in summer of 273, before heading on down to Egypt to put up another pro-Palmyrene revolt there, and then heading off to Italy and then to reconquer this area. So what this tells us, right, is important for the coinage information. It's in the summer of 273, when he's here, right after he's reconquered Palmyra for the second time, that he suddenly makes this change. And that helps us also rule out the Emesene connection, or that Saul is from Emesa, because the crucial battle of Emesa, where Aurelian supposedly sees a sun god in the sky, occurs in 272. So the date doesn't fit, right? Not to mention the fact that that story of seeing a sun god in the sky is a crucial battle at once looks too much like the famous story of Constantine at the Milvian Bridge. And it would be sort of too easy if you're the unreliable author of the history, the Historia Augusta who tells that story, to simply assign the crucial battle to the crucial or religious event, to link the two big headlines. And in fact, we have more evidence for 273. The second thing, moving on from the coinage, is an inscription that's found at Palmyra, which is very interesting. It's from a priest of the Palmyrene god Paul, who thanks Aurelian and his troops for, being good guys and whatever. But it becomes clear from this inscription that this priest, a guy called Septimius Sedudan, helped Aurelian to conquer the city, and that therefore he is being honored and rewarded by the emperor. Right? But in particular, our clue here is that Aurelian received active help from a priest of the Palmyrene god Paul. That, I think, is telling, right? We know now what the catalyst could be for his religious experience that would inspire that, or at least reason for his troops to think so, right? And indeed, the, again, unreliable Historia Augusta says that Aurelian restored the Temple of Baal there in, that slide didn't make it evidently, the Temple of Baal in Palmyra. I don't know if that's credible, but it certainly suggests a religious experience right then in 273. This brings us to our third piece of evidence that I think is very convincing. In mid-274, when Aurelian is introducing his cult at Rome, he's already, you can tell from the coins, decided to make this his big new cult. But when he's sort of laying most of the groundwork during that summer, basically the one, short couple months he gets off from like the soldier emperor's equivalent of midterms or finals papers, he then sets up his new temple, which has sadly been lost, in the Campus Martius in the north of Rome. And there, the historian Zosimus tells us that he set up two statues, one of Helios, the Greek god, and one of Belos from Palmyra, Baal, right? One that scholars think was indeed brought directly from Palmyra. Now, given the context, right, Aurelian set up these two statues, right? You can infer that they're somehow the focus. Either, since it's a temple of Saul Invictus, there is sort of one main statue of Saul, and then there's these two statues of Helios and Baal, the other two statues in the temple. That would suggest, right, that you have the Romanized Saul, since we know Aurelian Romanized his cult, with then foreign manifestations, a Greek one and a Palmyrene one. Alternatively, we can just assume that there is no official Romanized statue of Saul, and that the two statues this historian thinks we should draw our attention to in this new temple of the sun god are one of Helios. His role, he's a sun god. And next to it, one of Baal, who is not a sun god, but is an Eastern god. And in that case, these two we might take to be sort of equivalent, right, of equal rank. That's how they're being portrayed in the text. So in that case, right, we can clearly see solar associations on Aurelian's part, right? He intends for the statue to be taken as relevant to Sol Invictus, to the sun, right, which in a way is highly telling of his attitude. And so, in a way, right, what we get is a simple, clear picture. In 273, Aurelian made a sudden change in his coinage before his major reform, and we see this sudden response to circumstances elsewhere in his reign. For example, in 271, there is a revolt of the mint workers at Rome, and immediately on putting it down, he made a sudden change to the currency, some monetary reform, but small changes, but enough for us to see, all right? And then, during his sort of one time off when he's at Rome in 274, he does the great big overhaul. Likewise, in 273, there is a big event where he has some connection with the priest of the god Baal, and possibly does something with regards to the temple at Palmyrene. And immediately we see a quick symbolic change in the currency. And then, again, during this one bit of time off in 274, we see a major religious overhaul at Rome. The connection seems simple. The experience happened in 273 when he was at Palmyra, while he was putting down the Second Revolt that inspires this change in religious policy. Right? Likewise, the setting up of the temple with the Palmyrene statue, not one from Emesa or from Rome itself, or that's particular, right? The fact that that statue is there certainly suggests he saw some connection to the greatest achievement of his reign as emperor, and this god. And in a way, when we link all this evidence together, the powerful chronology, along with the plausible cause, and the continuation of this policy over several years, we get a pretty clear picture that whatever the cosmological relationship, his new cult was inspired by the Palmyrene god Baal. Thank you. Thank you for taking questions.
Maybe this is a kind of speculative question. I wonder if you might talk about the reasons that Aurelian might have made these changes to the Roman religious system by instituting this sort of it wasn't monotheistic, obviously, but it was placing this new god at the center of Rome's religious system.
Well, of course, right, this gets us at a huge number of scholarly controversies. It's often sort of the cult of Sol Invictus, whose role has either been exaggerated or was very great, is seen as sort of a precursor to Christianity and monotheism, where at least part of a trend in the period towards syncretism and henotheism, that is the merging of the gods into one form, and the worship of one god and exclusion, if not denial, of the others. Recently, those views have sort of been rejected, and given Aurelian and the other soldier emperors' essential conservatism, we can link it to something like Augustus favoring Apollo as his patron deity, and so the soldier emperor is already picking a god famous in the military and making that his deity, particularly after him making his name in the East, where people sort of assume that sort of god comes from. The religious reform also allows him to consolidate his reign and to sort of have a mandate, He reigns for 5 years, which is pretty impressive, in a period where reigns last a year or two, or very often months. And part of that is on his coins. You can see Aurelian sort of being supported and mandated in his reign and being invested with the job of emperor by the god Sol Invictus. So there are very good political as well as religious reasons for the policy.
Thanks, Jeffrey. That was really interesting. So, I mean, some of the analogies I think of for these two statues, right, that he dedicated would have been spoils, right, displayed in a triumph, right? Do we have any evidence for Aurelian, right? I mean, that leads to my other question was, where would the statue of Helios have been looted from, right? If we imagine that both the statue of Paul and the statue of Helios were looted, and then, right, made central to this new cult. That's one question, yeah.
I mean, I would be very careful in sort of assuming that the statues or the accoutrements of this new temple were necessarily looted, right? Clearly he's piling in a bunch of plunder, but it's not exclusively plunder. It's probably goods sourced from all over the empire. Given simply the role of Baal as a chief god and other evidence from the looting, it's pretty likely this is a Baal statue from Palmyra. As for Helios, that could be anywhere, since it is a sun cult in the most direct sense of a sun cult, right? It sort of makes sense he's going to find a sun statue, even if it's not from somewhere we conquered.
I was interested in what you said about it not mattering whether it is a moon god, a sun god, or a Jupiter figure. Does that mean that sort of anything associated with the sky can be used like any other kind of sky figure? I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
So I have this sort of clever quip. One of the scholars, Stephen Hitchmans, talks about the racist imperialist mentality and sort of making assumptions about the easternness of sun gods and how we didn't look at the Eastern evidence, just had our ideas about the purity of Roman religion, right? And he says that about 19th and early 20th century scholars. But of course, right, he doesn't think that. The same would be true of a peasant soldier emperor from the Balkans. And if you look at a lot of the other stuff about the Illyrians in terms of their social and religious policies, it shares a lot of I'm a good old common sense guy from the heartland sort of situation, right? In a way, it's very hard to believe that Aurelian got or was interested in sort of knowing the details of the gods of the city he conquered, so much as making general assumptions, nor, for that matter, the people at Rome, or the elitist imperialist Roman aristocracy, right? The only folks who would have been particularly concerned with the actual status, so much as seeing this is the new Eastern thing, so it must be a sun thing, and he conquered it, woo-hoo, would be people in the East. And doubtlessly, right, the local officials there would have had that in their policy. But, you know, you can sort of picture if Aurelian were receiving that lecture, it would be interrupted by some new Germanic invasion. It's relatively hard to see why, even if he knew better, it would have been important to him to maintain the local Palmyrene religious distinctions rather than make a crude general assumption for his religion at Rome. It's a sort of thing scholars like, but not soldier emperors. Thank you all. Oh yeah, the one thing I meant to say at the beginning and forgot is just to do the giving thanks thing everyone who does. So thanks to Willem and everyone else who organized this conference, to Toby and Sam for putting me through rigorous edits on the paper, and also to Professor Wilkinson who guided me through both this essay and a number of others as I slowly learned to do something like this. So thanks to all of them.
blessing we got.